Um, how many people here know what content marketing is exactly? It's good. No enthusiastic hands raised. So content marketing is surrounded in a lot of mystery. You know, some businesses treat it as blogging, some treat it as this mysterious, silver bullet that can solve all your problems in terms of driving traffic and getting you sales. And I'm here to tell you that, and why I put together this lecture is content marketing is actually a really good strategy for early stage entrepreneurs. Like right now, I work at a big corporation, Shopify, and I worked at other companies in the past where they have big budgets dedicated to this thing, but a big budget isn't always spent properly. There's tons of ways to do content marketing effectively without wasting a lot of time. So a bit about me. My name is Braveen Kumar. I currently work at Shopify, where I do content marketing. Before that, I worked at Shopify is a publicly traded company. We have like a massive team doing this. But before that, I worked at a smaller startup, Uberflip, doing content marketing there as well. And there was a point for a year where I was the only guy doing it, and I had to learn different tricks and strategies for doing it as sort of like a one-person operation with just a designer and like a social media person. Going back in time, before that, I was a freelancer and I used content. I used my blog to drive traffic and get me clients. And then in doing this over the years, you pick up tricks. You can't go to school for this. You can't learn this in a classroom, really. I think the people who are most qualified to teach this course are actually YouTubers, are actually successful bloggers, are the people who know how to capture attention in this day and age and build a lasting audience. So what the heck is content marketing? So this is the dictionary definition. It's super dry and boring. It says it's a type of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online material, such as videos, blogs, and social media posts that does not explicitly promote a brand, but is intended to stimulate interest in its products or services. Okay? Now, that doesn't tell you a lot. I think based on this definition, what a lot of businesses do is they'll start a blog and they'll start writing about themselves. They'll start writing about their products. They'll start doing it in a way where it's all about them. It's like me, me, me. You guys should know about me, my products. Buy from me now. And it's all about optimizing your past and present content and thinking about your future content to squeeze more value out of your content marketing in general. Because it's not about a one-off thing. It's not just like you publish a blog post, you get results. It's every single time you put out a blog post, you get more value out of that in the long term. So what is content? A lot of people think content is just a blog post. The way I like to look at it is it's a marketing strategy where you get to kill many birds with one stone. It serves several marketing functions, starting with brand awareness. If no one knows about you, they might encounter a piece that you've created. They didn't mean to come across you, but they stumbled upon this piece, and because of that, they got exposed to your brand. SEO and domain authority. This is usually where this is like hand in hand. Content marketing and SEO gets talked about together a lot. The more content that you put out under your website, the more pages your website has, which you inevitably create as you go about creating content, the higher your domain authority, the better your chances of ranking. And domain authority from an SEO perspective is how much weight does your website's URL have? But domain authority from like an expertise standpoint is like, how trustworthy is your brand? If you produce content, if you create content that inspires trust, then you also inspire authority in the traditional sense. And like I said, it's a complement to email and social media marketing, okay? Without content marketing, you're probably sharing other people's content, right? You're driving traffic away from your own website rather than to your own website. When you create your own content, when you have your own blog, you can fuel your email marketing efforts and your social media marketing efforts with that content that you create. So they work hand in hand. Content marketing can help you build your email list, and it can help you get more followers on Facebook, Twitter, because you're creating this stuff, because you're one of the cool kids on the internet. Now, if you're interested in building a brand through your personal brand, through thought leadership, content marketing is a great way to do that. Founders that like to take this approach because their personal brand, because they're serial entrepreneurs, is so inextricably, like it's inseparable from the things that they create, that they use content marketing as a way to connect everything together. So if you're a serial entrepreneur, content marketing is a great way to market everything that you've ever made under one umbrella by just writing about it, telling your stories. Now, it's also a good way to create demand for your products. So this is probably the way that most people go about doing it right away. It's not what you should be focusing on. It should be a very small part of your content marketing strategy. But it's not one that you can forget either. Because why are you in this if not to get results out of it? I'm going to show you how to like approach demand generation later on, but that's something to keep in mind. I've also seen partnerships spontaneously come about through content marketing. You mentioned someone in a blog post, you strike up a conversation with them. Something happens, you come up with like a co-marketing campaign. I've seen this happen too many times to not include it in this slide. It's also a way to go about recruiting. If you're really good at content marketing, you're really good at branding. And if you're really good at branding, you're really good at recruiting. Because especially in this day and age, if you have options, especially with remote work and like, stuff like that, the cooler the brand is, the more attractive it is to potential hires. And this is exactly why. You create ripples. Every time you create a piece of content, you create ripples that ripple out. Every time you distribute it somewhere, you're creating ripples. And that's why there's compounding benefits. So the longer you do it, the better it gets. This is often referred to as flywheel marketing. So compare this to a traditional Facebook ad or a billboard ad, where you do it once, you get the results, it's done. This is like, you put out one blog post, you're going to get like maybe like 10, 50 hits max, depending on how you go about it. By your 100th blog post, you'll not only have a larger email list if you do this properly, where you're going to see larger numbers, but that's like a permanent asset that you have, this email list, this audience, right? And each piece that you put out, you get a chance to grow this further. So that's why it's called flywheel marketing. The more you do it, the better it gets. And the more you learn how to do it properly, because I'm standing here talking about this, but it's really like a learn as you go kind of thing, because there's so many different ways to do this that as long as you have like a solid understanding of like where to start, then you can go about learning how to do it on your own, depending on what channels you want to tap into. So when does it make sense? Not every marketing strategy makes sense for every brand or company or product. But I would argue that content marketing generally works for any product, service, or industry, as long as these criteria are met. So one is that you have the time to create content. You can outsource, of course, but I think that, and that's why there's this other point, you understand your industry better than most people. If you understand your industry, you know what content your audience wants, and as long as you're like a fairly competent writer and you know how to like package something in a way where you can attract and maintain attention, you can get started at least. You can learn your audience well enough to eventually outsource it to someone else if you need to. You also have to be patient. This is not a short-term strategy. This is not like I have a drop shipping store selling LED shoes on the side. I would never use content marketing for that because it's a short-term business. It's not like my legacy or anything like that. But like if you want to build a long-term business, something that's there for like 5, 10 years, forever, content marketing is a great way to do that because as you grow your audience, you grow your business, and it's a permanent asset, again, that you can continue to leverage. Again, you're also doing social media and email marketing. This is a prerequisite. If you're not doing it, then you should be doing it to complement your content marketing efforts. Because content marketing without those two things is really hard to do because how else are you going to retain your audience unless you're collecting emails? Unless you're, you have like a Facebook page where you can promote your content to that audience, or you have like a Twitter following where you can like tweet it out. It's important to have these channels set up to distribute your content. Now this is super important. There's a targetable identity or passion among your customers. If I were to qualify this audience right now, I would say entrepreneurs or founders or aspiring entrepreneurs and founders. That's a targetable identity. That's an identity that I can create content for. I can create content around how to create your first website or like how to do social media marketing. This is content that you would probably seek out. This presentation, this lecture itself, you could call content. Something that you sought out to learn about a specific topic. And working backwards from that, it attracts a certain audience. So that targetable identity and passion is super key. if people are super passionate about something, let's say I'm passionate about cooking, fitness, whatever. These are targetable passions and identities that people identify with. And you can even go even more niche, right? Vegan chefs or like, I don't know, CrossFit, like, you just niche down and then that's another targetable identity. But again, that niche can't be oversaturated with competitive content. Content marketing has been a buzzword for I don't even know how long. But because of that, everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. And what that means is it's super competitive and you really have to have an angle that no one else is doing. That's key, right? So you really got to think about how you can enter this space with all this noise, especially companies creating content in a way that you can get a slice of that pie. The good thing is, though, everyone's doing, like a lot of companies, a lot of brands are doing content marketing because they feel like they should be doing it. They're not doing it properly. So with that said, we're going to talk about coming up with a strategy. The first rule of content marketing is no one cares. Like, I've seen this so many times where like, I fuck up one little thing about a blog post or something, like a headline or image or whatever, and I get no views because no one cares. People have other things to worry about. People want three things. They want education, entertainment, inspiration. Unless you give them these things, they don't care. Like a lot of small business blogs that I know of treat it as like a company news channel where they just talk about themselves. Company news doesn't do any of these three things. To qualify as a content marketing strategy versus like a company blog, you need to create content that does one of these three things or even all three of these things. Because really what you're competing with is this, right? And what marketers are trying to do these days is that. That doesn't work. We have ad blockers now. We have ways of blocking all of that out, and we have ways, like we choose to pay attention to this kind of content instead. You're really competing for attention, time, and trust from your audience. And this is what everyone is fighting for. Okay? The good thing is you're going after a small slice of that. You're not trying to have everything. You don't want everyone, okay? That pizza cat, that's for everyone. You're not trying to create pizza cat images, all right? What you're trying to do is create content for your defined target audience. Okay, so that starts with knowing who your audience is as a business. That starts with stuff, basic information like demographics. Do they skew male, female? How old are they? How much disposable income do they have? Identity again is a huge one. What do they identify as? What do they call themselves? Where do they hang out? Online and offline. Now this is super important for how you go about distributing your content, even the kind of content that you create. Because if they hang out on YouTube, you might not want to be creating blog posts. What questions and problems do they have? This is important from a search perspective because the first thing anyone does when they have a problem is they Google it, right? Now, the content marketing dream is that you start ranking, you're one of the first results for a highly competitive keyword that immediately qualifies your audience. Right? So creating content lets you come up for these searches in an ideal world. In the beginning, you're not going to, realistically, just because you don't have that domain authority unless you're an established business and you've been doing this for like a long time. You build that domain authority over time, and then you have chances of ranking. But even then, you can still be helpful to your audience. You can still answer questions that they have that relate to your product, that even just make them feel like you as a company, that you care about them, right? It's also important to know who your audience follows online. When you know who your audience follows online, you know who influences them. You know who the influencers in your space are. And when you know who the influencers are, you have an idea of, first you can use the content that they create as an inspiration for your own content marketing, but you can also partner with them through content marketing to get in front of their audiences, right? An audience that trusts them. It's not just any audience. It's not an audience that you pay to get in front of because they have a Facebook account. It's an audience that they've opted in to follow along with, who they will listen to. This is why influencer marketing is such a big thing. Content marketing can be one way to get in front of those audiences. I talked about what kind of content do they consume as well to inform your strategy. Okay, but it's not just one audience. There's segments within this audience. So you obviously have your target customers. These are the people that you're going after. These are the new customers, the qualified audience that you want to get, okay? But you're also doing content marketing for your existing customers, right? Just because you have a product that they'll only buy once and then never again, doesn't mean that you can't use content marketing to get them to refer your products to someone that they know, right? There's also secondary audiences, right? So each piece of content will focus on one or more of these. But secondary audience is probably like a lesser use case, but you know, there might be an opportunity where like, let's say I sell a vegan cookbook. I might do a blog post that's like 10 holiday gift ideas for the vegan in your life, right? That's not geared towards vegans, it's geared towards people who are buying things for vegans. And I happen to sell a product that is targeted at vegans. So that's why secondary audiences are also important to consider. And we talked about influencers as well for that reason. And then potential partners as well. We're gonna get into this later on, but like I said, partnerships are one of the most underappreciated benefits that you get out of content marketing if you do it properly. Okay, and when we talk about segments, I'm going to refer to Luxy Hair throughout this entire thing because I'm not one of their customers, but I think they have like a great blog. They cater to different hairstyles. Whether you have curly hair, braids, you know, whatever, there's something for you. So they're really segmented down their audience and have like an idea of like, not every person's hair is the same. How do we break this down in a way where we can speak to all these different people through content, but without alienating someone just because we're not addressing them with our layout of our blog? So that brings the so that begs the question, where do you focus when it comes to content marketing? Okay? Now, like I said, a lot of companies focus here on what their products are and what they're selling, right? That's a mistake. You do that later on. And a lot of other companies, they go too broad. They try to focus on what their audience cares about, but they go too broad. They don't qualify their audience, right? That pizza cat image before, that would resonate with a lot of people. But if I'm selling vegan cookbooks, for example, not relevant. I'm gonna get a ton of people that aren't interested in my products, that are unqualified, that will just take up space in my email list, right? We wanna find this sweet spot. That's where you create content, okay? Where that overlap is between your products and your audience. You can go on one end or the other, and you should, to have like a fully fleshed out content marketing strategy, but where you get the most bang for your buck is in that middle bit, where the way I look at it is bait, okay? You can probably throw out generic bait that'll catch anything that you want, or you can have very specific bait that'll capture exactly what you want, okay? And consistency is the second principle that matters most, I think, in content marketing. And I use this example. This is not tied to any business objectives, but I think it's like one of the best examples of how important consistency is, because this is a Facebook page that posts the exact same photo of Jeff Goldblum every day. It's called the exact same photo of Jeff Goldblum every day. And they have way more likes than I will ever get on my Facebook page. And it's at the same time every day. So this is like an example of how important consistency is. If you're not putting out the same content, if someone visits your blog and they see a variety of content and they're like, I don't know what this is about, I'm out of here, right? They're not gonna subscribe. It needs to be content that they need to arrive at your blog and be like, oh, I know what this is about, because this is what they're about. This specific category. Like Luxy Hair was about hair. That makes sense, right? They can go broader. They can be like a fashion lifestyle blog, but that's too broad. So again, consistency is key. Find that sweet spot, hit it consistently, so people have an idea of what you are. I can think of like dozens more examples like this. This is a YouTube channel that is just this dude drinking a bottle of water every single day, and he records it on his GoPro, and he posts it on YouTube, and he has tons of subscribers. It's just this thing that I've noticed with content where, I don't know, maybe you turn yourself into a meme or whatever. This is irrelevant. But consistency is key to building that audience, okay? But when you're tying it to business objectives, you gotta look at the funnel, okay? And this comes back to segments. There's different aspects of the funnel, and you're gonna be creating content that you should be able to map out to either one or more of these stages in the funnel. At the discovery stage, you're going broad. You're trying to cast a net where you get as many visitors who are somewhat qualified. Not all of them will be qualified, but some of them will be. And that's the kind of content you're trying to create at the top of this funnel, okay? It's just for discovery purposes. You just want to get your name out there. You want to get discovered. There should be stuff that's shareable, that's engaging. But then when you get to consideration stage, then it starts to be about your products a little bit. Then you start thinking about, does that overlap, right? And at the conversion stage, then it's like really about your products, right? And the content that you can create around that. How do your products solve certain problems for your customers? Those kinds of questions. Now, retention is the bit that content marketers often forget about, where at this stage, you're teaching people how to be successful with your products, right? And you're also trying to inspire advocacy. Okay, and there's different ways to go about doing that. We'll look at Luxy Hair again as an example of this funnel. At the top, these are all real blog posts. The links go to them. At the top, you have 21 easy Halloween costumes. This is a seasonal piece. Nothing to do with hair, but the way it's positioned is it attracts women, and during a time when they're thinking about Halloween costumes, right? It's a seasonal post. It has a lot of shareability. It's not year-round, but it's something that you can create and put out. It's fairly easy to create, too. That lets you cast that wide net, right? Get those likes, get those shares, get those comments, create engagement, and then from that large group of people, you might get a smaller group of people that's actually interested in your products. Okay? As we go down the funnel, you have stuff like 5 ways to curl your hair, okay? How to curl your hair has, as just that keyword phrase, that search, has 22,000 searches a month. That's a lot of searches. Okay, that's a lot of people looking for a solution to that question. So now, again, this isn't about, Luxy Hair sells hair extensions, by the way. I forgot to mention that. They sell hair extensions. So this isn't specifically about hair extensions, but it's still about hair. You got people that are interested in hair. As you go further down, how to get a thicker ponytail, that is very subtly kind of about hair extensions. You go further down, 6 reasons to wear hair extensions, very direct, very obvious, almost salesy. But you need that kind of content, because if you don't have that kind of content, you're not going to be able to convert customers. Okay? And at the bottom, this is a strategy that you can actually emulate yourself. I've seen, I don't know who started it. Luxy Hair might have started it. They've been in the game very long. It's called My Luxy Hair Story. So here, they reach out to their customers, they interview their customers, and they tell their customer stories. Now, this is a really interesting thing. Imagine someone imagine someone interviewed you and wrote about you on their blog, right? Would you not share that with your audience, right? And people tend to hang out with people that are like them. So by doing that, you can get access to your customer's audience. You inspire advocacy, right? So that's a good campaign that you can, or a good strategy that you can emulate yourself. Like I've seen for SaaS companies, for example, when you're selling software, you'll interview your customers and tell the stories of like how they increased, I don't know, sales by X%, right? You'll do like case study style content. So that can be also good for not just retention, partnerships, using like micro influencers if you have any among your customers. Okay, so thinking about all the different types of content you're going to create and all the different purposes it needs to serve, all the different functions it needs to serve, you need to have a plan. So every content marketing strategy needs an editorial calendar. I use Trello. I think Trello is great. There's a template for this editorial calendar here as well that you can use and repurpose for yourself. There's a link to this presentation at the end, so you can get all these links and sources. So when you're planning out your content, to start with, you don't need to publish every single day. Because what happens when you publish every single day is quality dips. Instead, be super focused about what your goals are for each piece. Map them out to different parts of this funnel. And try to ensure that you have a variety, right, to serve different purposes. I want a piece that's good for awareness. I want a piece that's good for converting, right? And try to like create one of each as best you can. And there's going to be some overlap, obviously, but like try to have like a healthy mix, and then map it out. Do one a week in the beginning, right, until you figure this out. And the reason I say 1 a week is because creating content isn't the only thing you need to do. Creating and publishing isn't the only part of content marketing. There's a lot more to it. So it can be time consuming. But again, you can do this without spending any money unless you want to pay to promote it. But with this calendar, what I like about Trello is you get to like add little labels where you can like categorize and designate content to different parts of the funnel or different parts of your content marketing strategy. And you can set due dates and do all that kind of stuff. And also invite freelancers if you want to outsource eventually. It's also a good place to just dump all your ideas and then pick the ones that you want to go with. Okay? Now, content marketing doesn't need to be blogging. It doesn't need to be anything like that. This is an example of a brand that's been super successful with content marketing. They have a blog, but they don't do the traditional like how-to stuff. They sell bicycles, fixed gear bicycles. They come out with mixtapes, and they publish them on SoundCloud, right? Because that's their audience. It's those like, I think it's California, it's like fixed gear cyclists. They do a lot of like electronic music type stuff. But this has been hugely successful for them because it not just helps them generate awareness through the artists that they partner with to create these fixed tapes, but it also helps them give their customers who are riding their bikes something to listen to, right? That creates a stronger affinity and connection with the brand itself. Okay, here's another example. This is one of my favorite examples of content marketing. So VAT19 sells curiously awesome gifts. They sell like giant gummy bears and like all kinds of like weird shit. But what I like about them is that they create a YouTube video for every single one of their products. Now, the guys behind this have video production skills. They're super good at that. I think that's like their day job or something. But you can see that like their audience is huge. Like it's in the millions. It's insane on YouTube. And they basically create a video, entertaining videos too. Sometimes they'll do like parody music videos to showcase their products. And not only do you laugh, it also generates demand, right? You might even share it, right? So they do this for most of their products, and that's how they've gained traction so far. It also works for software too. Rand Fishkin of Moz. Moz is they sell SEO. They do like SEO tools. There's a bunch of free ones and paid ones as well. But this is an example of a content marketing strategy that's heavily tied to someone's personal brand. Now, Rand Fishkin started a bunch of other things, but he uses his personal brand of teaching about SEO, content marketing, that kind of stuff, to sell his products. And he does it in a way where he's not inherently trying to sell people products. He's trying to help them, right? The expression I always use is, if you teach a person to fish, you can sell them fishing gear, right? If you can, through education, you can create your customers, right? They might not be interested in your products right away, but through teaching, you can make them interested. You can make them feel like, hey, I can use that too. Now, setting up your blog is where a lot of people get stuck. Someone tweeted at me today. They were like, should I start my blog on Medium or should I start it on like my own thing, right? And I'm like, I can't think of many scenarios where you're going to start your blog on someone else's property. It makes very little sense. You have very little control. Medium seems to be the common solution. And I'm like, Medium's so limited. Yeah, you have Medium's audience, or you have LinkedIn's audience, or you have Tumblr's audience, but you don't want to build your blog there, okay? You want to build it on your website, because every time someone shares your content, they're sharing your website, right? Every time you distribute a blog post, you're distributing your website. If you were to publish and host your blog on Medium, you're distributing Medium. You're not distributing your website. You can link back to your website. It won't be as impactful, right? You won't be able to build that domain authority through consistent publishing over time. It's important to organize your content under tags and categories as well, like we looked at with Luxy Hair. When they had categories for braided hair, curly hair, etc. You also need to update it at least once a week. A dead blog is not very interesting. It could still produce value through just people finding these links wherever they happen to find them and like driving traffic, but you need to like constantly update your blog. It needs to be this active destination where, and it's so interesting that people want to come back to it and be like, hey, what's going on with this brand? It needs to be integrated with your email list as well. So a lot of early entrepreneurs I know use MailChimp just because it's free. think up to like 2,000 subscribers. Great solution. You know, you can, every time you generate a subscriber, it gets added to your MailChimp list, and then you can work that into your email marketing efforts. It also needs to be social friendly. So you need to have social widgets and comments built into it. That way, you can let your audience engage with each other and share it with their own networks as well. Okay? Now, this is an example from HubSpot. There's better examples out there, but you can see how the user experience of the blog, of the website, is designed to convert visitors. Okay? If I get 10 visitors, that's too small a sample size. Let's say I get 1,000 visitors, okay, to this blog post. They finish reading it. There's so many different actions that they can take, right? They can click here to subscribe, or better yet, you can have like a form that you embed. You ask people to subscribe. They just enter their email. You have them as a subscriber. There's related articles down here, so they can read more of your content, get to know you better and what you're about. And there's also sharing buttons here, right? So when you design your blog, you really need to think about the user experience. How am I getting the most bang for my buck with every visit I get, right? Now, before we talk about creation, we're going to talk about distribution. Distribution, content marketing lives and dies on your ability to distribute this content, not create it. Some of the worst things on the internet end up on the first page of Google. That's great distribution. It's not the worst things, but like the best things don't always end up on the first page of Google. You really got to think about distribution so you can get out there, you can be where your customers are, where they're looking for content, where they're discovering it. Okay? So distribution can be broken down into 3 types: owned, earned, and paid. Owned is what no one can take away from you. Your RSS feed, which every time you publish a blog post, it goes to your RSS feed. You can connect that RSS feed to other platforms. So every time you publish a blog post, it'll be distributed on these other platforms, like Feedly or like Pocket, something like that. Or your audience can take that feed and consume it themselves in their own apps. Your email list is another owned channel. No one can take your email list. You can switch email providers. You still get your email list, right? So that's something that you build over time with content marketing as well. And your social profiles. Earned. Now this is where early entrepreneurs need to really focus, because this is where it's really about effort, okay? So SEO is one of those things. Don't really want to talk about that because you can rank for things as an early stage business. It's just, this is something that you consider more as you, like you'll see results from SEO as you continue to go about building your content marketing strategy, building your repository of content. But link building is another way where you will reach out to other people who write about the kind of stuff that you write about, and you ask them for links, right? Or you link in your own site or in your own blog posts back to other content, right? And that's another way for people to discover your content as well, through these distributed links. Guest posting is another form of earned distribution, where there's another blog. You as a creator or writer, you can write or produce content that gets distributed on these other blogs. Then you get a backlink, right? You can engage in link building through that. You get a backlink, and that helps your content rank a little bit better. And you might also get some traffic coming back to your blog by going about it this way. Press and reviews, similar to guest posts. You might get traffic coming back if you get other people to create this content, or you get content created on other websites and platforms in front of other audiences. Forums are huge. Forums are severely underestimated. If you ever used Reddit or Quora, you know that these are places where people tend to ask a lot of questions. So that question and answer format is something that you can use to distribute your problem-solving content, or even content that's just innately interesting, right, on Reddit. You know, it has a chance to go viral, and then who knows, right? It's really hard to plan for that, but the question and answer format is usually much easier. Someone asks a question, you write up your own answer to it, right, and then you drop a link to your content in there, right, without revealing the full answer. They click on it, they go back to your blog. You build this over time. That's what's called earned media. You have to work for it. It doesn't just happen. And this is the mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make, where they don't work for it. They just publish things, and it's like, you build it, they will come. It's never the case. Social shares, if you can create content that gets other people to share it, that's something that you earn as well. And syndication, big fancy word, it just basically means, in the basic sense, republishing. So you have and this is why I recommend that you don't build on other platforms like Medium or Tumblr, that you write on your own blog, because you can always republish on these other platforms, right? And then get access to their built-in audiences. Medium, for example, has a massive audience of people in tech, right? That might be your audience, but you can get the best of both worlds by publishing your blog post on your main blog and then publishing it on Medium. All you do is you put a link at the top saying originally published on wherever you publish the blog, right? And then it's fine. Just try not to do it too often. You want your blog to be like the primary destination. Paid. So if you have money to spare, I highly recommend this as well, especially if it makes sense for the content. If it's something that you know will get you either a lot of traffic or a lot of sales or bring you some value, and it's already been proven in an organic capacity, in a free, unpaid capacity, then you might want to consider putting money behind it. And then you have your options here. Facebook ads, promoted tweets, AdWords. You can also pay an influencer to give your content a shout out. You can also do that for your products. That might be better, actually. And then sponsored posts, which are like these paid shout outs, basically, but on other blogs. Like I said, this is where the real creativity is. It's not in creating content, it's in how you distribute it. Okay? There are countless ways that you can distribute content, and not all of these will be relevant to your brand or your products, but the ones that are the ones that you should double down on. You should be picking a handful of these. If you're going to attend the talk next week, Brent, who's back there, is going to give a talk about social media marketing. He'll go into detail. But you want to pick a handful of these because it takes time to learn each one individually, right? Reddit is different from Twitter, is different from Facebook, is different from StumbleUpon, Flipboard, Dig, you get it. Each one has to be learned on its own. Start with a handful, get familiar with them, and then expand. Pinterest is one that I think is severely underestimated. If you're in anything to do with like cooking, home, design, anything that's like visual, right? Pinterest is a great way to drive traffic if you can explore that and figure that out. And if you do videos, you know, YouTube is obviously the go-to one, but then you can repurpose those videos for Facebook, Instagram as well. So now we get into creating content, okay? This is, the reason this comes after distribution is because you need to think about how you're gonna distribute this content before you think about how you're gonna go about creating it, right? That way you know that there's an audience for this content, that you're not just creating it blindly. So in doing keyword research and looking at search engines, I think this is a great way to figure out what kind of content you should be creating. Because the way I look at it is Google is our collective curiosity. It's what we wonder as a whole, what all of humanity wonders, right? What we search for, what we seek out. And I recommend 2 tools to do this for free. You can use Keyword Planner, but that's been sort of limited if you're not using AdWords actively. Like if you're not paying Google, they're not going to give you full access to these numbers. But I recommend Keywords Everywhere, which basically every time you Google something, it'll show you search volume, like just underneath that Google search bar. And Ubersuggest, which will give you suggestions for keywords that you can go after when you type in a main keyword. So here I typed in hair extensions, and it gave me all of these. And it'll organize them, it'll alphabetize them for you. So you go through this, it'll give you some ideas of keywords that you can go after with your content. You might not rank for these, but it's a good way to get a sense of, or you might not end up on the first page of Google for these, but it's a good way to get a sense of what there's demand for, right? And to really quantify that rather than kind of like trusting your gut. Social media is another source of inspiration because most social sharing data for content is public. So you can use that to make judgment calls about what kind of content that you should be creating based on what's already performing well, okay? So I typed in hair, it's just like a generic term, and this is what came up. So I'd be like, okay, here's one that maybe I can emulate and do a little differently, right? Wedding hairstyles, if I was selling hair extensions or something. So you can really get a sense of like Also, this is weird. Unicorn armpit hair is trending right now. You get a sense of that too, like newsworthy stuff that you can like jump on and then maybe talk about. And then keep in mind that when you talk about these viral topics, not everyone's been exposed to it yet, right? They'd be like, what, unicorn armpit hair? I want to click on that, right? So you might get that, right? Or there's people who have already seen, they know unicorn armpit hair is a thing, but you find some other angle, right? So you create that piece. And then you're able to like capture people's attention like that by jumping into the news cycle, what the media is talking about and being a part of that conversation. Now, this stuff is generally short, like the newsworthy stuff is short-lived usually. You'll see a spike and then it'll die down when unicorn armpit hair is no longer a thing, okay? This stuff is generally timeless because people are searching for this. Where if you produce this content, people will always have braids, right? You know, people will always be looking for stuff around that, or curly hair. You can create this kind of content that is, this is called evergreen content. It's usually focused on search volume. And you have topical content, which is this sort of like newsjacking content, where you try to insert yourself into certain conversations, or you know, Christmas is coming up, you create content to be in line with what everyone else is thinking about, talking about, okay? But you can also use social media to gauge more from like a psychological perspective, like what people care about, right? What gets them to share, what provokes them to share, right? And then you can use that to make informed decisions around what kind of content you want to create, okay? So there's all kinds of content that you can be creating, but how-to content is, like without a doubt, like one of the most effective types of content that you can create. It helps you solve a problem. The headline example I have here is how to tie a tie in 30 seconds, okay? I don't remember what the search volume is, but there's a ton of search volume for this. It's a very common problem. If I'm selling ties, you know, different ways to tie a tie is probably like the kind of content I should be creating, right? Or like how to tie a tie, I don't know. It depends what your brand is. It's very unique and individual. Like it depends on really what you're selling and what kind of brand you want to create. But people will always have problems, and brands can always offer solutions by creating content, okay? With this though, you want to be certain that you are actually competing with other resources, right? That you're actually, or that at the very least you're actually solving the problem, right? That you're not just going after that demand. That, you know, there's a promise, okay? On the front end of the click, you see a headline. After someone clicks, the headline makes a promise. After they click, that promise should be fulfilled. That's key. Otherwise, people are going to bounce, and you have clickbait articles that no one likes, okay? Don't do clickbait. Write good headlines that get clicks. Don't do clickbait. Don't do empty clickbait. Because I've clicked on that stuff, and I'm like, I've thought worse of the brand after, where I'm like, you lied to me. You're lying to me about anything else? Okay. Roundups or listicles are another thing that you can do, okay? People love listicles because, again, the promise is, I know what I'm signing up for. I have time for 7 things. I don't have time for 100 things. Or maybe 100 things, that's substantial. I should go check that out, right? I want 100 things. So this listicle format tends to do very well for that reason, because it makes that kind of implicit promise where I know what I'm getting out of this, right? And it's super easy to put together. Like BuzzFeed does this all the time. I don't know how much the writers get paid, but it's very basic. Their job is not that hard. Just copy whatever's on Reddit, whatever's already trending, and then take some tweets, embed them in there. It's easy to emulate. You can do it yourself. And I encourage you to actually try it. Identity bait is another one. One thing every real writer knows, okay? Writers have an identity to them, right? You can call that out in your headlines. You can get these people that you want to click on your headlines to click on it by just calling them out, right? Entrepreneurs, dancers, chefs, travelers. Like these are identities where there's a lot of inherent passion to them, right? This carries over to things like ethnicity, gender, you know, any sort of like label you can go after in your headlines, and then you can attract those people by just calling them out in your headlines. And I call this identity bait for that reason. It's different from clickbait and ego bait, which is next. Ego bait is when you're going after one specific person's identity, right? If I interview an influencer, or I interview you or anyone, and I create this piece of content around you, it's called ego baiting because they'll probably share it, right? Unless they're like super famous or something. Like, you write a blog post about J.K. Rowling, she won't even glance at it. But if it's someone smaller, right, who's still building their own audience, who would still benefit from having this content created around them, then you can access their audience, right? Now, this is a really accessible way for you to get clicks early on, because there's influencers range from like the superwomens and the the massive ones, the Epic Meal Times, the big influencers, to the small ones, the ones that are just still starting out, the ones that have like 1,000 followers, right? You could still, and those ones are like the most willing to share this kind of stuff, right? Unless they're like super artsy and they're like, I don't want to self-promote. But generally you can like create this kind of content and get them to share it just because you're highlighting them, you're making them look good, right? So why wouldn't they share it? And then when they share it, you get access to their audience. So topical and newsworthy stuff. So this is stuff that's happening right now. We talked about this earlier, but stuff that, like Christmas is coming up. If there's an angle that you can insert yourself into this conversation, that's a good thing to do. Especially if there's a seasonal angle, right? Because this is something that you can create once. There's 4 seasons. You can create something or there's like multiple holidays. You create something for all of these holidays or these seasons. You can reuse that every single year, right? And re-promote that and then get value out of that every single year. And then like the one-off things, like let's say, I don't know, fidget spinners or something like that. It's trending. If you can find some kind of overlap between that and your brand, maybe get in on that. You have to be very careful when you do this because it can come off as you're trying too hard. So only do it if there's like a very clear connection between what you're selling and then what that viral trend is. Controversy. This is also dangerous, or it could be fun. It depends on how you do it. If you do it properly, you can. This is my favorite thing to do: is you write a blog post that is inherently controversial. I wrote a post, or I helped someone write a post that was about food photography, taking pictures of your food. People feel one way or the other about that, right? But either way, people have something to say about that, right? Just like people have something to say about whether pineapple should be a topping on pizza, right? You can write these things and you can just justify it or you can feel one way or the other about it, but take a stance, and in doing so, especially if it's a stance that isn't common, right? If you're like taking someone's worldview and you're just like, flipping it over, like the world's flat, right? Here's why. Like not something that extreme, but like something where you're like not destroying someone's worldview, but you're just like contradicting it, right? You'll get clicks from that, you'll get comments. And when you get comments, especially on Facebook, it helps that post rise up in Facebook's algorithm because Facebook sees that as engagement. So that's a good way for you to sort of game engagement and game algorithms, social algorithms. So curated pieces. Now these pieces are, a lot of people don't know this, but you don't need to create everything when you're doing content marketing, okay? Blog post is just a container. You can fill it with different things. Like I said, BuzzFeed fills it with tweets and content they find on Reddit or products or whatever. You can fill your blog posts with other things, right? This includes infographics, could be stats, could be quotes, could be other things. As long as you cite where the original source is, you should be fine. When in doubt, ask for permission. But generally, as long as generally you should be fine with stuff like GIFs, that kind of stuff. And if someone asks you, just take it down. But yeah, that's a good way to create content without creating content, right? Then you have the headline that does the heavy lifting. People come, they get an experience, and then that's something that you should definitely make a part of your content marketing strategy, just because it's a much lower effort way to produce content. Case studies are another thing that could be super helpful because they're very sales oriented, okay? If you create a case study, you're interviewing your customers. Interviewing is another key component of content marketing, especially when you're doing case studies, because the best way to create original content is to use someone else's words or ideas or thoughts or stories, right? Especially someone that no one else has really interviewed. Or you find something to ask them that no one else has asked them. So with case studies, you're going specifically, you're targeting your customers specifically with these interviews, right? So you're looking at your customers, you're being like, okay, you clearly love this product. Are you willing to talk about it on our blog? Can I interview you, get some testimonials? this is a lot more powerful than just any testimonial that you get or like a product review. Because this tells a story, right? The example I used was how I cut my electricity bill by 30% with smart light bulbs. I made all these headlines up, by the way. I don't know if they actually exist. So if I'm selling smart light bulbs, the value prop is right there, and it's phrased in a way where it's like, oh, someone's already seen success with this, right? It's not in the brand's own voice either. It's in the customer's voice, right? And people are more inclined to listen to the customer's voice than the brand's voice, because brands will say anything to sell you something, but customers, less so. Sales content as well. Explainer videos, Kickstarter videos, like all that kind of stuff, still content. It serves a very specific purpose though, right? It's not meant for, it's not meant for the top of the funnel. It's meant for, it's specifically about your products, it's specifically about what you do, and it's very sales oriented. There's a clear call to action at the end, which is, you know, contribute to my crowdfunding campaign, buy my product, whatever, check it out. You know, there's a very specific call to action at the end. Okay. So these are resources to make it happen. All of these are free. You can use these to go about content marketing for free. A lot of people don't know that you can create videos for free, fairly simply. Again, the quality and the originality are dependent on your creativity, right? So if you're a creative person, I think content marketing is great. I think you would naturally, like if you are naturally a creator, I was a creator before I got into content marketing, but if you are naturally a creative person, then this is like the tool set that you need. Keyword planner for keyword research, went through keywords everywhere in BuzzSumo for ideas. Google for research, obviously. Interviews as well. If you don't know something, so as a content marketer, I write about things that I don't know anything about, quite often. And the way I go about doing that is I interview people that do know what they're talking about, right? And then I create a resource based on that, right? And then you're able to do it in a way where that person doesn't have time to write for you, or to create that content for you, but through the interview process, you can create a resource that's unique and that's helpful, right? Just by leveraging these experts. And when you interview someone, there's also that ego bait component where they might be inclined to share it as well. So interview podcast is a format that is inherently friendly to ego baiting in interviews. So what a lot of startups will do is they'll start a podcast where they'll interview people who are part of their audience, or sorry, influencers in their audience, and then they'll create a resource out of that or a piece of content, and then that's the format that they take on. But I encourage you to like explore different things, especially if other people are doing that thing already. You got to be a little different. Hold on, some water. So it went through curation as well. So most social posts and content that you find online has an embed code that you can grab and you can put that into your blog post. Generally, this is safe. Again, if someone asks you to take it down, but stuff like infographics, there's infographic directories that you can Google. If you go there, you might be able to find infographics that relate to your audience or your niche, and then you can go about embedding those into your blog post. And then, again, a blog post is just a container. You embed the infographic in there. You have a piece of interesting content that's been proven out already on someone else's blog. Now it lives in your blog. And what they get out of it is they get a backlink, right? So as long as you cite the original source, they get a backlink. They get to go about doing their link building. And that's good to do. Or you can create your own infographics and then have this happen to you, where you get your content created and then, or curated, and then you get exposure to new audiences. Jiffy is another one where the 6-second format is great. You can borrow other people's GIFs or create your own. It's fairly simple, straightforward. Use Jiffy to create your own GIFs. You can add captions, whatever. You can use that on social media, or you can use that in your own blog posts. For promotion, again, these are free resources. So Buffer's a free social media scheduling tool. It's fairly simple. You plug in your link. You choose which profiles you want to share it to, and it'll find the best time to share it. Streak CRM is a little more complicated, but it's free. I use this for outreach. It basically turns your email, your Gmail, into a CRM, a mini CRM. So if I want to reach out to 10 people, and I want to create a pipeline of like potential interviews, or this is good for just like all around. You're an entrepreneur, you don't have resources. I need to figure shit out. It's a good way to just like reach out to a bunch of people, see who bites, see who doesn't. You can even see who opens your emails and who doesn't, right? And it's a good way to go about prospecting for potential interviews or partners for content, right? And if you mention someone in a blog post, let's say I do a roundup where I feature 10 brands, this is a good way to reach out to them as well, if you can find their email all at once. Design, Canva, fairly popular choice for design. This is a good way to create social posts. You can create infographics. You can create blog headers that make your blog look nice. And this is free. Or you can pay $1 per asset, but you can get fairly far for free. So I recommend just using Canva for all your design needs, basically. And it'll do the dimensions for you as well. So you don't need to like worry about like, oh, how big should this be for my Facebook post, right? Or how big this should be for my blog post, or my blog hero header image. Stock photos and footage are also fairly big and important in content marketing. Unless you're taking your own photos, you're probably going to be relying on stock photos, right? So I've listed a few options here. Pixabay, Burst, and Unsplash are some popular options for stock photos. Video as well. You can create this yourself using Adobe Spark or Lumen 5. Or if you're vlogging, YouTube has its own built-in editor that lets you edit videos, and then you can just upload them to YouTube. But Adobe Spark and Lumen 5 are interesting because this lets you create those. Have you ever seen those videos on Facebook where it's basically like an editorial video where it's like almost like slides or short clips, and there's like text that goes over it? You can create that yourself using these tools. It's fairly easy and straightforward. Google Analytics for analytics. If you're not experienced with Google Analytics, I say really dive deep into that. The way I explain this is, again, like I come from I was like more of a creator like years ago. I would never be like, numbers, get away from me. But now I'm like, this is like so cool because when you create something for an audience, right, the traditional reaction is applause, right? How loud the applause is, that's when you know, like, that's how you gauge how good the content was, right, or the performance. What Google Analytics lets you do is you get more granular with that. You can see where the applause is coming from. You can see, how engaged people are, how much time they're spending on this thing, right? How many people are even in your audience, right, looking at this thing at any given moment. And eventually, if you decide to outsource, Upwork has tons of writers and design talent and video talent. Find someone to work with. I recommend one person. There's tons of marketplaces where they encourage you to go to different people. I say find one person, let them know your brand when you're ready to outsource, and then figure that out from there. But your personal network is also a way to go about doing this. If you put out an ask for a good writer who knows about this topic, someone might know someone. That's another way to go about hiring this person when eventually you do need to. But in the beginning, I recommend doing this yourself, especially if you're a competent writer. I say that's like the #1 skill. You don't need to be amazing. You just need to be readable. Okay, getting the most out of your content. So you look at content as something that you create. You're investing time, maybe money, but definitely time into this thing, right? Now you want a return on your investment, okay? Now that's what this is about, okay? I can write a 1,000-word blog post. I've written 3,000-word blog posts where I mess up on the headline, okay? This is something you test over time. You get to know what works, what doesn't. But if you do wrong by the headline, you've lost 90% of your potential value, okay? Again, this is why clickbait works. It's not about what's after the click. No one knows what's after the click. They just know what's before. So really invest upfront in your headlines, okay? There's different formulas that you can use, but like I said, the listicle format works really well. Something that creates curiosity is ideal, right? Either you want to create curiosity for what's in the article, or like this headline, 6 little-known health benefits of oranges, right? That little known creates curiosity. People are like, oh, I know the benefits of oranges, vitamin C, and whatever else, right? But by adding that one adjective, it gives the headline a whole new meaning, right? And it makes it a lot more clickable. How-to headlines, on the other hand, like how to tie a tie, you want to incorporate a value prop. So it's like how to tie a tie in under 30 seconds, right? How to tie a tie 5 different ways, right? Something extra, right? That's beyond just like how to solve this problem. How to solve this problem, and here's why my thing is the solution that you should be paying attention to, okay? Now you can use this thing, there's a link at the top, CoSchedule Headline Analyzer. This lets you, this will basically like give you, it'll rate your headline, how good it is, which, because it's a machine, you know, it's okay. It's good if you have some doubts about whether your headline is good or not. But what it also does is it shows you what your headline will look like when it's shared on Facebook, Twitter, how it'll look in search engines. If it's too long, will it get cut off, right? So it's a good idea to just run it through this tool just to see what it'll look like before you commit to something. Another thing about headlines. If you're going after a keyword, you want to have your keyword, your main keyword that you're going after in your headline, okay? Not just for search engines, because that's how they crawl content and figure out what they should be showing and what they shouldn't, what's relevant, what isn't relevant, but also for users, right? If I'm Googling something specifically about if I'm Googling how to tie a tie, I want to see how to tie a tie in the headline, right? I want to see some synonym for tie. I don't want to see like anything like that. I want to see that exact same phrase, right? But what you can do is some CMSs, some blogging platforms, some website platforms will let you split up your headline so you can have an SEO title, which is for search engines to crawl where you use certain keywords, and then you can have another title, which is what it shows on the front. That's more for clicks and humans, right? Then you can be a little fancier. You can get like creative with like how you word things. Okay, and again, in terms of getting value from your content, if you have a blog post that drives 1,000 views, that's great, it's 1,000 views. But what are you getting out of it, right? You get 1,000 views, you ask those 1,000 visitors to subscribe to your blog. Why, right? Yeah, your content was great, but why, right? What you can do to ramp up your list building efforts as you build your email list, which by the way you should really be doing, because this is your most engaged audience usually, or it's like an audience that you can market to for free, right? Facebook ad, I'm paying to reach this group of people. Every time I want to reach them again, communicate with them again, I have to pay again. Email, whenever you want. As long as you, like if you do it too much, you might get unsubscribes, but generally go at your own pace, but it's free, that line of communication. Lead magnets are irresistible offers. So generally, you'll put a lead magnet behind an email form. Give me your email, or give me information about you, and then I'll give you this thing, right? I'll give you this really expansive resource that'll teach you this thing that you really want to know about, but only if you give me your email, right? That's a good way to convert visitors into subscribers, right? If you can't convert them into customers, subscribers is the next best thing. Some quizzes let you capture leads at the end of them, right? It's like, give me your email and I'll give you the result. Or you can have your result anyway, but give me your email. Or you can create a similar interactive tool, a calculator or a chatbot, where someone lands on your blog post and then you direct them to this other tool that they interact with, and you can get information from them that way. Or in them interacting with it, it qualifies them. You bring them down your funnel, because it's like they wouldn't be interacting with this thing to talk to, like let's say you're a real estate agent and you have a chat bot that will, I don't know, pull lead information from them, what kind of house they're looking for, whether they want to rent or buy or whatever. If someone fills that out through the chatbot, then they're qualified, right? So them just interacting with that gives you a sense of how qualified this visitor is to be one of your customers. So free toolkits and templates. This is one of my favorites because, well, personally for me, I create resources for marketing. What I'll do is I'll create blog posts that will answer certain problems, and then I'll package the tools up, templates, PDFs, that kind of stuff, and I'll put them behind an email form where it's like, give us your email and we'll send you these tools, right? And that's all automated. You don't do this manually. You can set it up in MailChimp. Or you can use a software called Lead Pages to do that. There's tons of options. But basically, free toolkit, free is everyone's favorite word. If you offer something for free in exchange for an email, where that's the price of admission, people who are interested will give you their email, and because they're willing to give you their email, that shows that they're at least somewhat qualified to be your customer as well, okay? Discounts, if you're selling physical products. Discounts are a great way to go about doing this, where a lot of e-commerce websites, they'll do pop-ups. You'll land on their blog, you'll read this blog post, and then you'll be hit with a pop-up where it's like 25% off if you give us your email. That's another way for you to get subscribers and collect emails from that traffic. So it's about inserting these lead magnets into your content and really using them across all of your pieces. And generally, the more contextual it is, the better it converts, the more subscribers you get, right? So if you can create ones for different customer segments, then that's ideal. But in the beginning, just one generic one that you can use across all of your blog posts, that'd be a good way to just build up your email list early on. Okay? And like I said before, a blog post is a container for content, okay? It's not just words. And the reason I bring this up is because what I see a lot is people writing. They're just write. I'm a writer, and I hate reading. Like I need pictures or I'm out. It's good to have a picture every 100 words or so, 120 words or so, just to break up the text, right? If it's all text, people are going to get, they're going to stop reading or like they're going to get distracted or unless it's like really good writing. But generally have some pictures that get people to stick around. Bold things, have block quotes. Really make it visual, right? It's a canvas that you can like paint any which way you want. You don't just need to write text, right? Organize it with subheads, really think about how you can create an experience that will get people to stick around. Okay. Now again, every piece that you create is an asset, and you want to squeeze as much value out of these assets as possible. So if you're doing something like a podcast, where there's a lot of upfront investment in time and effort to get a guest, record it, edit it, upload it, distribute it, you really want to break it down into other content that you can use across your social media marketing and other channels as well. So in this example, you have a podcast interview, right? Let's say it's live, record it live. You can actually record it, upload the visual version, the video version to YouTube, upload the audio version to your podcast hosting platform, turn that podcast into social clips for Facebook, short sound bites that you can distribute on Facebook, and fill out your social media calendar, create quote graphics out of little snippets that the interviewee said, and do a write-up with a blog post with the podcast in it, with the transcript as well. Right? And like that's a good way to just make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck, and you're creating more content as well out of this. Okay? Link building is also important. This is easy to forget. You publish something, you distribute it, but you forget that your blog is this connected thing, right? Your blog and your website is this connected thing. You want to build links between your website and your blog and your content and your other content. Okay? So there's different ways to do this. So this is called anchor text. It's what you highlight or what you hyperlink. Okay. Here this is Luxy here again. They've highlighted one of their products. They have linked to one of their products here. Okay. But they've also linked to other content here. So it's like if you enjoyed this, here check out this as well. It's better if that's built into your blog post's UX, where someone lands on your blog and then they see related content, just it's built into the experience. You can also just link, like if there's like something where it's like a certain anchor text that relates to another piece that you've written about a specific topic, like professional hairstylist, right? If you have a post about that, you would hyperlink that and then link it to that post. This helps Google crawl your content better because it's like, oh, this content is part of this website too. It's all connected, right? And this helps with your SEO efforts. But also just people click on these things randomly when they're reading, and then they go further down the rabbit hole. They get to know your brand more, right? The more people read, the more they consume, the more engaged they are. So you want to really create that rabbit hole effect. You don't want someone to just land on your blog post and be like, okay, what now, right? You want to keep that journey going as long as you can, or capture their email so you can carry it on like later in the future. Okay. Calls to action are also important, or CTAs. So this is, someone lands on your blog post, they get to the end, they're like, what now? Okay. That's a great opportunity for you to be like, here's what I want you to do. It seems so trivial to ask for something. It's like, you know what I want you to do. I want you to buy my products, but like, or I want you to subscribe to my email list. It seems so trivial, but it's insane how much of a lift you'll get in terms of shares or email subscribers or whatever. You just ask for it, right? Because people get to the end and they're like, oh, that was great. I'm gonna move on, right? Or it's like, that was great. And now they're asking me to subscribe. Sure, I'll do that, right? Or share it, I'll do that. But it's a matter of just like asking for that thing, right? So you can do that through text, asking people to subscribe, or you can use tools, right, or specific strategies to build it into the experience of the content as well. So this is something that you can create through MailChimp and other email marketing platforms, or SumoMe, where you get little like embeddable things that you can embed into your blog post, or they'll like come up randomly when you're like scrolling down. There'll be like a little box that comes up. It's a good way to just collect emails by baking it into the content itself, rather than just having a line at the end that's like, subscribe to our blog, and then expect them to find out where that field is, right? You can also do something like, again, all the other content upgrades that we talked, or lead magnets that we talked about earlier. You can have those integrated into your post, and with a call to action, direct people's attention to that, right? So you can convert them into either customers or subscribers or sharers. So analyzing performance is also key. If you're afraid of data, don't be, because it's so important to improving your efforts over time. And it's not that hard to learn once you realize what the different phrases mean. So sessions in Google Analytics is basically traffic. It's how many visitors are you getting to an individual blog, and overall. That's what you want to really look at. Overall growth in traffic and individual traffic to see how effective your headline was, your distribution, that kind of stuff. Okay. This is also a good way to see when your audience is active. When should you be publishing content, emailing it out, sharing it on Facebook? It's important to look at where your engagement is the highest and double down on that. Bounce rate is another thing. It's a percentage expressed out of 100. It's how many people arrive at your blog post and leave almost instantly. You want to keep this as low as possible, and this is a good way to tell whether if it's too high, like if it's in like the high 90s, then either your content isn't good, you've broken your promise that you made in your headline, or the traffic that you're driving to it is just not any good. Okay, there's different reasons, and you can like dive deep and like really get a sense of what that means for you. So traffic sources are another thing. Looking at referrers, where is your traffic coming from? So as we talked about earlier, you're going to be exploring different distribution channels, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. It's good to see which ones are actually driving the most traffic, because those are the ones that you might want to double down on, even pay to amplify, right? So it's good to get a sense of that. A lot of obscure promotion platforms, like StumbleUpon, for example, or like Flipboard, these things that like some people might have never heard of, that people still use, like tons of people still use, right? If these things end up being good ways to drive traffic, you might want to double down on that, but you won't know unless you look at your traffic sources. Subscribers generated is another obvious one. How many emails are you getting from your content? So shares is usually how the average person will measure success. They'll be like, oh wow, this got 8,000 likes on Facebook, right? The thing is, well, Facebook for one is paid usually if it's that high, just because you can't do much unpaid on Facebook. But so shares can be misleading, but it gives you a good general sense of like, how interested are people in this? What's your reach like? Those kinds of questions. What platforms is this, most popular on? Might be surprised that like, oh, LinkedIn happens to be where this content is getting the most shares. That informs you about your audience, or at least for that piece of content. And you want to look at genuine comments. So what you'll see a lot is a lot of spammy comments, right? What you want to do, especially when you're blogging, content marketing, is you want to also be leaving comments on other people's blogs, which is what a lot of people do, but they do it in a spammy way. Because every comment that you leave, that's a piece of content, small little micro piece of content. But someone clicks on your name, they get a link back to your site, they might click it, you might drive traffic, right? Or you can like insert yourself into the conversation as well. It's these little things that also contribute to your content marketing efforts through like community management. But when you get them on your own blog, look for the genuine comments, the ones that are like, wow, this is amazing, thank you so much for this, right? And then you can even engage with those people, right? And nurture that relationship, and then it's very one-to-one, but the fact that it's all public, everyone can see this. It shows that you care. It shows that you're willing to carry the conversation forward, that you're willing to like really build an audience and invest in your audience. So genuine comments are another metric that you want to look at, but also an opportunity that you want to capitalize on. And then obviously leads and sales, depending on the nature of like whatever your business model is. Okay, so one final point before we go to the Q&A bit. What a lot of businesses will do, a lot of entrepreneurs, founders, freelancers, you name it, they'll just do content marketing without a plan, without a real sense of like why they're doing it, right? So you need to do it with deliberate care, where even when you're talking about your products, you're putting it in a way where it's really about your customers or your potential customers. And you want to do it in a way where it's like, you're like, I'm going to write about this thing because of this business objective, right? Or to serve this specific audience, or because of this specific opportunity, right? And you eliminate bloat like that. I've been in meetings where it's like brainstorm session, let's brainstorm ideas. We'll jot down a bunch of ideas on a whiteboard and we'll just do all those ideas. They haven't been vetted. I strongly encourage you to vet all of your ideas through search volume, engagement on social media, even using your own eyes and ears, right? Customers talk about certain things, your audience talks about certain things. There's opportunities for content ideas and things that you can create around that, right? And to really like put some deliberate care into it, because again, you're investing time into this, but every time you create a piece of content, right, that's time you invested into it, but now it exists. You can reuse that, you can reshare it, you can repurpose it, you can do all kinds of things with that asset going forward, right? So invest that time and care into like creating something good, and then do that again and again and again and again with care, and that's content marketing versus just blogging. All right, I'll open up some questions. Yep. So do follow and no follow links are, so this is when you're building backlinks to your content. There's like different stances on this. It used to be that you want to get follow links if you're gonna, like let's say I created this resource, right? And I want to build backlinks to it so I can get it ranking on the first page of Google for that keyword. You want to build links back to it, right? So you'll reach out to blogs to build these backlinks, just for context. But there's two types of links, do follow and no follow. It used to be that you wanted the do follow links, the follow links, because that's what would pass on that SEO juice. But now it's kind of like, these SEO, like Google's algorithm changes all the time, what they prioritize, what they don't. From as far as I know, it's not as important, right? A link's a link. They're still weighted a little bit more, but it's a lot less. So that answers your question. Yep.
My question is, do you need loyal audiences for your content marketing to be effective?
So I would say content marketing is what gives you loyal audiences, right?
So for me personally,
Yep.
I go to the web, pick up content, but I don't really care where the content is from,
Mhm.
as long as it's a quality content. So my question is, do you need a stable, loyal audiences visiting your site for your content marketing to be effective?
In the long term, yes, but that's where you're capturing emails, right? When you capture emails, let's say you arrive at a piece of content where you're like, oh, this was great, but I don't really care who made it, right? But if you can capture an email from that interaction, then you can continue to market to that person in a way that's more relevant to your business, right? So that's why I say double down on email collection, because that's what really gives you the chance to create that like relationship in that person's inbox, right? Does that answer your question? Yep.
This is kind of a very generic question. I know it depends on the platform
Yep.
and on the space the company operates in, but overall, what would you say is a type of content that is becoming popular, that is, if somebody needs to focus on something specific, so video, pictures, blogs, whatever, what do you think is something that is useful for somebody who doesn't have a lot of time to focus on?
I would say that's very like, it really depends on your, yeah. I would say
Overall in
yeah.
the space, like what kind of content do you see
Video.
generating the most value?
Video. Just because, and this is like, it really depends on your audience, right? Because I know a lot of media companies, for example, are firing their writers and they're hiring video producers, right? Now, there's like pros and cons to that. The reason they're doing this, which a lot of people don't know, is not because people want video, it's because it's easier to put ads on video. It's easier to make money off of videos. So I would say, again, like long-form blog content is still relevant, right? It really depends on your audience. Like I said, with Soul Bicycles, they released mixtapes, right? Because that's what their audience wanted. So it's not really about, and their audience is super niche, right? So it's really about thinking about who your audience is and then trying to create content geared towards that. And thinking about how you can go away doing that in a way that's a little bit different from what your competitors are doing. Especially if you're in like a super saturated niche. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. Yep. To have had what? Well, if your content's on YouTube, you're going to have YouTube's ads on the video anyway, right? Your own ads? Like your own brand's ads? So I know with podcasts, especially brand-produced podcasts, they will have a mention of the brand at the beginning and at the end, but it has to be like very subtle, right? And like again, you're playing the long game here. You want to get people to subscribe. If you try to be too salesy all the time, you're going to lose that trust which you're trying to build. There is a time and place though for you to do that. It's very like you need to like test these things yourself, kind of thing, right? But generally, be subtle. Yep. Yep. That's great. Yeah. What do you sell? Okay. So Pinterest also has Bible pins, so it's like very like it's great for like products for that reason. I would say get to know it better, right? Because I've seen like several case studies, people selling physical products geared towards women especially, where they're able to drive that traffic. And as far as I know, I don't really use Pinterest myself. I just kind of like look at the traffic that comes from it. But as far as I know, it's like mostly about like how you organize it and like how you create this like nice visual experience. But yeah, definitely like dive into it and like do some like more research into it because I think it would be a good channel. So the beauty of content marketing is everyone's doing content marketing to teach these things. Like I work for Shopify. Our blog is content marketing for entrepreneurs. Yeah, so go there, go to Buffer is another one, the Buffer blog. They focus on social media a lot. What else? Yeah, Sumo Me. Look at case studies, actually. I find case studies to be the most useful rather than generic how-to stuff. Like, look at the generic how-to stuff first, just to get a sense of it, but then look at case studies, right? How a certain brand drove traffic to their website or made a certain amount of sales by using a certain channel. That's usually a good way to, like, you can lift certain tactics from those case studies and borrow them and try them out yourself. Yep. That's a good question. It depends on what you're selling. If you're selling, okay, for example, I'll speak to like what I do right now. E-commerce software, right? For people to start businesses on. A lot of how-to content around that, but we'll also write like inspirational content. We'll also do, we won't do entertainment, right? But there's other brands that will do entertainment because it makes sense. So you want to think about those three things that people look for: entertainment, education, inspiration, and create content around that. And if you're seeing that how-to content works really well, do more of that. But I encourage you in the beginning to test the waters, because every audience is unique, and then use that to inform how you go forward, right? And you can always change how you organize your blog and how you go forward with your content marketing strategy, right? Not everything's going to be a hit, right? When it is, that's great. You can double down on that, right? There's ways to like squeeze more value out of that. But yeah, be prepared for like some things to be a miss and to learn from that. Sorry? Yeah. You could, yeah. You could, but again, it's very specific to your audience, right? So the way you categorize things, you should be like put yourself in your audience's shoes and think about how they would navigate your blog and look for content that they want to consume, right? So if it's like tutorials or like how-to stuff and that makes sense for your products, then have a category like that, right? But if you're like, I'm pretty sure like Dollar Shave Club doesn't do that, right? They take a different route. It really depends on your products and your audience, which is why this is so hard to teach. Yep. At the back. Entertainment? Entertainment? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's like an asterisk at the end of that, right? There's an asterisk at the end of that where it's like you're allowed to talk about yourself, right? But in a way where there's like an overlap, like not just you. It's like, this is what I did today, right? Or like, this is what we're doing as a company. That stuff, there's a place for that, like company news. But to do content marketing properly, right? When you're trying to acquire customers, it has to be focused on your audience, right? That's the difference between a company blog, where you're just sharing news about your company, and true content marketing, where you're trying to drive traffic. You're trying to get exposure to new audiences, and you're really trying to grow, right? So that's actually, this is an outdated presentation. I had brackets after that where it's like, no one cares about you yet, right? Which is like a better way to put it. Where once you have someone's trust, then they'll start to care about you. Or if you just want to focus on that part of your audience, that's fine. But if you really want to like grow, get more customers, then there's this whole other part of the funnel that you should be also focusing on. Yep. No, I agree. Storytelling can be great too. You can have content around that as well. But in terms of like creating content over time, so with personal brands, for example, or like travelers or whatever, right? It's a lifestyle that they care about, or it's like the story that they care about, right? I think that's different from just talking about yourself and your by you, I mean your products. I just mean like, this is like this is what I'm selling. This is it. This is like 5 reasons why you should hire me as like a freelance writer or whatever, right? Yep. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Last one.
All right. So, like, piggybacking off that comment about the fact that no one cares about you yet, seems like a chicken and egg issue, right? Where I can create all the content that I want, put it out there. No one's going to look at it unless I market it in some way. So, would it be wise then to create content
So that's where guest posting comes into play. But the ultimate value that you get is from building your own audience and engaging your own audience, right? So just because you publish on your own blog doesn't mean that you can't, again, repurpose or re-promote that content on another platform, right? That way you get the best of both worlds.
I get what you mean. For example, I listen to podcasts, right?
Yep.
And just about every podcast that I listen to will always have a featurette on audible.com.
Mhm.
They'll say like audible.com/, whatever, and you'll get a free book. Now, is that considered content marketing or is that marketing? Because if it were me and I was Audible, I'd be like, oh, I'm on a podcast now. I am people, I've got a 30-second snippet here that, someone is giving me, and I am promoting the content that I have on this platform, but I'm paying for that privilege, right? But I can't necessarily create content just to be,
Well,
Audible.
are you selling a product? Because if you're not selling a product, then that's
So
just,
I'm selling
yeah.
so for me, I'm selling a service. My service is dedicated to busy families and older
Yeah.
adults. So my struggle is that I don't know if the other thing is I don't know if I should spend all that time trying to create content when I'm more worried about things like cost, process,
Yeah.
Other forms of marketing. I
Yeah.
feel like marketing to me is like something I should just like pay for
Yeah.
and get it out there. But I understand the value that this can create. But the thing is, like in the beginning, am I going to spend all that time? I don't know if I'll have the return on investment
Yeah.
on that versus later.
So that's why it's like either you do it and you go all out, or you pursue other marketing channels. Like I said, like I have a store.
This
Yeah.
is not critical for businesses.
Sorry?
This is not absolutely critical for businesses.
No, it's you can survive. Marketing is like there's countless opportunities, right? This is one way to go about marketing, where, like I said earlier on, like these are the values that you get out of it, and everything's like connected, right? Or if you're selling products, you don't need I know certain companies that don't have a blog, they're just really good at Facebook ads, right? That's where they invest all their time and money, right? But if you want to create more value than just sales, or you want to build your email list and like do that kind of stuff, and drive your costs down, where you don't have to pay to resell the same products to people, where you can just do it through email marketing, then there's value, right? So if it's just like a one-time thing and then there's no like repeat purchases or anything like that, then I would say, you can do something else. But if you want to continue to sell to these same people, new products or whatever.
Subscription service.
Yeah, subscription services. If you're selling many different products, so someone buys one thing and you want to sell them something else. Again, it really depends on like, if you're like a creative person, if you're like, I know I can create good YouTube videos, or I want to like do this, right? Then you might want to do this because again, you can also build your personal brand, and you can also like do all these other things, right?
I just feel like for me, like I think it depends on where you are in your business.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
If you've